Hello YouTube! Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Tina and I make videos on lifestyle, home, and DIY projects every single week. Today's video is my second video of my Halloween series where I'm taking items from Dollar Tree and turning them into Halloween decor. So last week we did some boho inspired Halloween decor, and this week all the projects are inspired by the moon, and I really love moon decor. I wear it in my jewelry as well as just have it around the house. And I've also made some other moon DIY projects on my channel before. So for this video, I'm dedicating all my projects to moon decor, and I really hope that you guys like them because I had so much fun creating them. And again, my goal for this series is just to show you guys how to create some fun, affordable, and easy DIY projects that you can create with a lot of items that you can find at your local Dollar Tree or your dollar store. Since Halloween looks a little bit different this year, I think that it's just so much more fun just to create some projects at home. And with that being said, let's jump into the first project. Hello from VoiceOver Tina. So this first project is just so much fun to do. So first I'm starting off with a novel from Dollar Tree, and you can use whatever size book that you'd like, but this was just the largest one that they had, so that's what I grabbed. Before doing anything else, I removed the jacket of the book so that we're left with just the book cover, and then I'm gonna start drawing out my design. Initially, I was using this bottle cap to map everything out, but then you'll see that I kind of just change it up just because the bottle cap was a little bit big. So I'm going to use this to map out the phases of the moon, and then I'm also going to use another bottle to create a curve as a guideline. But essentially, I wanted to have my full moon in the middle and then some of the other phases on both sides going into a crescent moon. I also plan to write the word spells on it, but eventually you'll see that I didn't end up doing that for the cover, but really you can do any design or words that you would like on this cover. Next, I'm going to make my design 3D by using hot glue. So I'm just going to follow along my design and then add on the glue pretty thick. I'm basically tracing everything out with my glue gun, and I ended up doing a couple layers of the glue until I liked how thick it was. But for this step and this whole project in general, you do not have to make everything look perfect and smooth. I think it actually looks even better when everything's more rough looking. So here's how everything is looking while it's drying, and as I mentioned, I used my initial drawing as a guide, but I ended up changing it a little bit so everything would fit better. I then added in a few stars just to map everything out before I added in more 3D elements. So I'm using these little plastic bats, and if you saw my last Halloween DIY video, you'll see that I used these rings from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use them again in this project. All I need to do with these is to cut off the ring portion so that they will lay flat on the book, and then I'm going to go ahead and just place them on just to see where I want them to go. Now I'm just going to glue them down with my hot glue gun and then press them down until they dry. And then next I'm going to fill in all of the negative space with my little stars and dots. And this might look familiar to you if you saw my constellation pumpkin in my fall DIY decor video. This is using the same technique. I'm going to create little plus signs, and then I'm going to fill up the sides to create these little twinkling star shape, and then I'm just going to repeat this all around the book. Now I'm adding tiny stars by dotting the glue all over the cover, and as you can see, I'm just dotting the glue first and then moving my gun in little tiny circles and pulling it away so that it creates the perfect bead. I also wanted to mention that you can get really creative here and put whatever you want on your book. My design is just one example of what you can do, but you can use letter stickers or any small plastic toys or decor pieces to glue onto your cover. Anything that has a 3D element will really work to create your spell book, and you can get super creative on the cover as well as the spine and even the back cover. While everything is drying, don't forget to remove the tiny little hot glue gun webs before moving on to the next step. After you're happy with your design, we can move on to creating some texture. So first I'm going to add in a layer of Mod Podge with my foam brush, and I'm just going to brush this across the entire cover. And then I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and separate the layers to create a 1-ply sheet, and this is what I'm going to use to place right onto the cover. And you'll see that when I place it down, I put it over the edge a little bit just so that we can fold it over later. But I'm just going to add a lot more Mod Podge onto my brush and then just dab it all along the paper towel. And this is where you're going to see that really cool textured look. I'm brushing it all in different directions and going over the 3D elements really well so that it is raised and you can definitely see it through the paper towel. For the edges, I just folded it over and glued it to the inside of the cover, and then I cut off any pieces that were hanging over. So as you're covering your book, you could just lay each piece of paper towel right on top of each other and then just glue it down really well so that it looks as seamless as possible. And here's how everything is looking after this step. You can see that there's a lot of texture, especially on the moon and the stars and the bats. They are just looking so good already. After that has dried down, I started working on the inside pages, and this is totally optional, but I wanted to give my book a really worn-in look, so I'm adding some watercolor to the pages, and I'm using tones of browns and blacks here, and I'm also going to spray a lot of water on these pages, and that's really going to warp them and make them look really old. For this step, there is no right or wrong way to do it. You can use tea to stain the pages, you can fold and bend the pages however you'd like. You can get really creative and fun with this part. Alright, now that everything is dry, I'm going ahead and painting the entire cover black, and I'm just using regular craft acrylic paint for this step, and I'm using my foam brush here to really get into all the little nooks and crannies of the whole entire piece. I let that dry for a couple of hours before coming back to it, and it's already looking so good now that it's dried down, but this next step is really where the magic happens. So I'm going to use some gold metallic paint for this next step, and I'm just going to put the paint onto a piece of paper towel, and then I'm using that to rub all over my cover, and this is really where you'll start to see a lot of the texture come through. The paint is going to go over all the raised parts of the design and give it a really nice contrast, and as I'm rubbing the paint in, I'm going in every direction to make sure that it grabs onto everything. It's already looking so good, and you can totally leave it here as a completed look, but I really wanted to add in some of the details back, so I poured out some black paint and gold paint to fill in the parts that I wanted more definition. So I'm just using a tiny paintbrush for this, but the black really added in some more shadowing to the parts that I thought were too light, and then the gold really made everything pop so much more, especially when it came to the stars and the moons. I made sure to make this really opaque so that it really stood out from the rest of the textured background, and I think that this extra step really made such a difference. And lastly, all I needed to do was to paint the inner edges of the cover and let that all dry down. Dreaming up the design for this book was so much fun, and I absolutely love how magical it came out. This project was so easy to do, and this technique was so fun and can be customized to any type of aesthetic. You can totally do this to a notebook if you want it to be more of a functional DIY, but I think this project is just so much fun to do, so I hope that you guys try it out and get creative with it. For this next DIY, I'm starting off with a soap dish from Dollar Tree, and this can be found in their bath section, and I got it in the color black. So my idea for this tray was to create a moon tarot card design on it, since the tray shape is perfect for it. So for the project, all I'm using is a white Sharpie paint marker, and I'm using the oil-based version of this marker, and these are my favorite to work with, but alternatively, you can use paint and a paintbrush. First, I'm going to draw in my crescent moon, so I'm going to very carefully and slowly draw a C shape in the middle of the dish. And I know that working with a paint marker is a bit intimidating, especially if you don't have a sketch underneath it, so please take your time with this part. To keep my hand extra steady, I'm leaning it onto the edge of the dish, and I'm just using my wrist in one swift motion to create these curves. Once I got the shape down, I'm just going to smooth it all out and fill it in with the white paint to create the crescent moon shape. And as I'm moving around the moon, I'm rotating the dish so that my hand doesn't have to do as much work. Next, I'm going to write the word "the moon" at the bottom of the dish, and I tried to write it in all caps, but I kept messing up, so I ended up taking a paper towel and wiping it all off. And this is a great little trick if you mess up, so if the paint is still wet, you can totally get away with just wiping it off, but you can also use something like acetone or nail polish remover to get it off if it's already dry. In the end, I gave up writing in all caps and I actually wrote it in cursive instead, and I think it came out so much cuter. Then for the top part, I'm going to write a Roman numeral 17, which is the number that I've seen on all the pictures of the moon tarot card, so I hope that is correct, but if it is not, please correct me in the comments down below. To make this look more like a card, I'm going to create a border around the whole dish, and again, I'm using the edge of the dish to help guide my hand, and I tried to make the line as even as I possibly could, and I'm going to round the edges of the border. Then I'm going to create some clouds at the bottom, and you can do this by creating a bunch of small upside down U's, and here you can see that I'm just going to create 2 of those. And lastly, I'm going to fill up all the negative space with little stars. So these are my favorite star shapes to create, and they're super easy to draw. So I will have all the different shapes on the screen so that you can see them all very clearly. But really, it's just a combination of plus signs and curved lines to create these twinkle ones. And I just think that they look so cute on anything that you draw them on. To make this piece last, I would definitely suggest to protect it with some type of sealant, but I only have a matte spray on hand right now, so I'm going to wait until I have a glossy sealant to finish this up. This moon tarot card dish is so cute, and you can use it for decor for Halloween or even to have out on display year round. You could also style it by leaning it up on a shelf or using it as a functional item to store all of your jewelry. I just really love how this piece came out, and I think that I might actually keep it out past Halloween. For our last moon inspired DIY, we're going to create a wreath, and Dollar Tree carries these wreaths year round, so I always have these on hand just in case. And for this wreath, we're actually going to create a moon shape. So first I'm going to start by cutting into the wreath. And I found it easiest just to cut each branch one by one and then removing the branches as you continue cutting it. And depending on what kind of wreath you use, you might need to use a heavy duty pair of clippers, but I found that my regular scissors work just fine for the majority of these branches. There were a couple of thicker branches in there that I just cut into first, and then I broke it off with my hands. So once I got a small section of the moon cut out, I'm going to do my best to taper both of the ends so that it looks more like a crescent shape. So I'm just going to cut the most outer branches shorter and then leaving the inner branches of the wreath longer. And as you can see, it kind of creates this point on each one of the ends, so then it creates a beautiful crescent moon. Before moving on to building my wreath, I'm going to tie them with a few pieces of twine, and this is really going to help the pieces from unraveling as I'm working on it. And this is also super helpful to do if you need to taper the sides if your wreath is a little bit bigger. For my wreath, I'm just using whatever I had at home already. So I'm using some raffia, leftover flowers, and bunny tail to just lay things out and get a rough idea before I start gluing it all down. First, I'm going to add my accents, so I'm starting with my raffia, and I'm also going to add in some leaves as a base, and then I'm going to build on that with my focal flowers and then my accent flowers. And I'm basically going to build it out from the focal flower and move it outwards. Since the first two projects in this video were very dark, I'm going for more of a vintagey light vibe for this project, but I think this wreath would look so amazing if you spray painted it black and went for a darker color palette as well. And when you're building out any type of wreath, there really is no right or wrong way to do it, so feel free to use any colors and flowers that feel right to you. After I glued everything down, I'm going to tone down the colors of the wreath a bit by whitewashing it, and I'm just going to use some white acrylic paint and water. So I'm brushing that right onto the petals and the leaves of each one of the flowers, and it really gives it this cool whitewashed look, and it almost gives it a dusty vintage feel to it. For an added Halloween touch, I'm going to add in some spiders, and I used these in my previous Halloween video, and I just painted them white to tie everything together. This crescent moon wreath is such a fun addition to add to your Halloween decor. I love that you can just add such a fun twist to your traditional wreath by doing something as easy as just cutting off some of the branches. And whether your Halloween vibe is dark and moody or light and bright, this wreath is definitely something that you can use to customize to match any color scheme. So those were all the projects for today's video. Let me know in the comments down below which one was your favorite. I really love every single one of the projects I created, but I think that the one that was the most fun project to work on was definitely the spell book. I think it just came out so good, and it was just a different technique that I've never really done before. I mean, look how freaking good. I think this would look so cool if you did it on a notebook so that you can actually use it as well. But I really love this. I hope that you guys try this out at home because it was just so much fun working on it. I would also really love to know what your vibe is for this Halloween. I think I'm going more for a boho vibe, but obviously some of these projects that I've already created will fit in nicely if I just style them the correct way. Halloween is such a fun time to get creative, and every year I really love to create something, so I really hope that you guys like these projects. Before I close out this video, I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the love that I received on my last video. It was the first little makeover that I did in my new space. So I'm really glad that you guys are loving these. My couch just arrived like the other day, so we are working on a living room makeover soon. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up this video if you liked it, and subscribe down below if you haven't already. I'm making videos every single week, and also follow me on Instagram. I'm posting behind the scenes footage as well as posting on there every single day. And that is it for today's video. Stay inspired, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!